Call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Consent calendar.
Move approval.
I just wanted to make a couple of comments.
All right.
Julie first.
Let's see if I
Question
can find
first.
let me find my comments. Go ahead, Newell. Let's see if I can find my comments here.
Well, a couple of things. One, when we have audits on consent, it concerns me that, while we all read them and understand them, and these are really short audits, then it goes on to the full board consent. It's probably, it probably makes more sense, even if we just put it on, any questions, do it. I don't think those ought to be on consent, not usually audits, just personal opinion. So that was one thing on the two audits that we have there. But particularly on the federal funds, the city audits, I think, are even, those are really pretty tiny. But I did have a question on the Stantec, and it's going to come up in the other one.
Where are we at?
This is 9.0.
Okay.
Just sort of, this is a big contract. This is a $9 million contract. We're doing another $450. Really just want to know, do we have an update on all of the deliverables? What have we gotten? Where are we at with the $9 million? This is our single largest labor contract that we have as an outside source that's not construction. It would seem that we might want to have a kind of a good, robust discussion where we at. What have we gotten for this? What are the next? What's the future look like? Because this is the only contract, I think, sort of in the history of our organization we've done. So I would think, from my seat at least, would like to be able to say, here's what we've accomplished there. I see the work list, but I don't know where we are on each of those items. So willing to support this, but can we come back quickly at another meeting to give us a nice update on where we're at? I think we would all like to know. It's one of our favored leading edge projects, and would really like to know.
Commissioners, that's a great point. First on the audits and then on the Stantec contract. Our project management consultant contract is a very large contract, multi-year contract. This is in my time frame, this is the third consulting firm that we've used, and we've had much success with this consulting firm. And so Hisham is very detail oriented, and so he has analyzed this with a spreadsheet to maybe not the nth degree, but the mth degree. And so I know, because I've seen him go through the task order with a fine-tooth comb, so he can answer any one of your questions if you have a specific question, but we can bring that back to the board.
Yeah, mine's just really the update, not specific. I got to go out to the station, got to see some of the physical stuff that's going on with other parties. I think the board would probably appreciate just to have that, more high level. Here's where at in each one of those. What do we expect to see accomplished next year, and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Julie, you had a question.
I did, and it's probably a petty one, and I probably should have asked it ahead of time. I'm just a little confused about the language, and it's on the contract change orders. It's on page 2 of 3 in for item 3. It's on page 3-3. And it's the relocation of the ramp metering signal and having to put in a ramp metering pole instead of attaching it to the sound wall. And it's just the way that the language reads in here, that the contract plans called for a mast arm pole from the sound wall. But then it turned out that the sound wall design didn't accommodate that, couldn't handle it wasn't strong enough, whatever. And so we had to do the cast and drilled hole, and then we had to put up a concrete barrier wall in front of that to protect it. So my question is, was the sound wall there well before? Was the sound wall part of the same contract? If so, whose mistake that we didn't account for the fact that the sound wall wouldn't accommodate what was planned to go on top of it? And it's only $110,000, but that's real money. And so is there someone that we can go back? Is it in the design or in the spec?
Yes, good morning, Commissioner and board members. So, yeah, it's excellent question. The reality is that there was a mast that was supposed to go onto a new sound wall being supported by new foundations. Unfortunately, the sound wall was not adequate enough to handle the loads that were going to come with that mast.
Why?
That is design error, that they put it in there, but it wasn't able to sustain the loads. The best alternative that we found was to move it to the opposite side of the ramp, because other than that, it was going to encroach onto the shoulder of the roadway below that belongs to the city of San Pablo, and also it was going to perhaps be more costly. So as a general answer to your question, there is a ongoing list of issues that can be attributed to design errors. We are going to compile the list, and we're going to bring the consultant in, have a conversations with them, and we're going to then evaluate whether we're probably going to bring it to the board and or the committee to see if they find that it is adequate to go for errors and omissions. That can be a lengthy, complicated process, and so that's where we are right now. Like I said, there's an ongoing list. I don't know if we're going to have more. We still have a little bit more work going on. So, but that is the situation.
So the pole, the ramp metering light was all part of the sound wall, same package. Everybody should have known that's where it should go. They needed to design the sound wall to support it. They didn't. Cost us extra money. Fault is in the design. That's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Any other issues? All right. Did I have a motion? I can't remember. I had a motion, but I had no second.
Second.
I now have a motion and a second. So we're called for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? In the consent calendar. Moving on to 11.0, regular agenda items, legislative update.
Commissioners, Lindsay's not here, as you can tell. I'm here. She gave me a marching order. She's in Washington, D.C., representing the authority at a Transportation Research Board committee meeting where she's on a panel. And so I'm going to cover this agenda item for her. On the federal side, and Mark, my friend Mark Watts is here today to give us an update on the state side, but on the federal side, the big news, and there's a news release in front of you. The federal government on the 19th of January, and all the political appointees had to clear out on the 20th. We were notified that we were named as one of the 10 federally designated test sites in America, in the United States. The other California-based organization that has a test facility that was named also as one of the 10 is Sandag, and Sandag was mentioned in our application because we don't have a freeway application, and so for really high-speed testing, their test facility includes State Route 125, the toll road. They can shut that elevated section off, and they can run cars back and forth. Nobody's going to be on it, on-ramp, off-ramp situation. And unless you're on the mountainside, no one can see what they're doing either because it's up in the air. And then I-15 is an age-old test facility that the Automated Highway System program used in 1997 to run the General Motors cars, hand off wheel, feet off pedal, and they followed in a platoon very closely, and they pulled out and they did all these maneuvers using binary coded magnets and guidance systems. So it's an old test facility. We partnered with them on our application. A lot of people asked for letters of support, if we need letters of support, and our response was no, we don't need letters of support. So no one sent a letter of support for us. We stood our own merits. Stantec and CCTA developed that application, and we're very proud of the fact that we're one of the 10 test facilities, and so you can read about that in front of you. We're also looking to go back to Washington, D.C. in February on our annual advocacy trip, and so we're making plans for that at the end of February. Commissioner, some of the feedback that we've gotten is maybe the federal government doesn't like us now in Californians anymore, and I think that when we go back, and I think almost all of you have gone back with us, we make contacts with not just our elected officials, but more importantly, USDOT. We go to the associations, and we really talk about regulation reform and things that we need to operate in this political environment. So it's always, at least from my perspective, it's always been well worth it to take that trip back to Washington, D.C. So Mark is now going to, unless you have any questions of me on the federal side, Mark's going to talk a little bit about AB 28, and then maybe we can get a support position or at least forward this to the board for SB1, AB1.
The only comment I would make is that Mark DeSaulnier got appointed to the Transportation
Oh, yeah,
and
that's
Infrastructure
correct.
Committee, so that's a big deal for us. I mean, he's a minority, but he's there.
Yes, when we were in Washington, D.C. for the Transportation Research Board meeting, I did happen to see Chairman Schuster, and I said, we have a representative on your committee, Congressman DeSaulnier. He goes, I don't know him. He must be a Democrat. I said, well, yes, sir, he is, but he's from the Bay Area, so treat him well. He said, okay. All right, so, Mark?
Thank you very much. I, too, have my marching orders from Lindsay. We coordinated yesterday. Two things I want to bring to your attention, as the Executive Director just mentioned. First, AB 28, if you recall, recently you took a support position. That bill did pass out of Assembly Trans. It's on its way to appropriations. And the bill had originally been double referred in policy committees, but working with the leadership in the Assembly, we're able to bypass the judiciary review because it's been reviewed time after time after time. The delegation itself has been reviewed in previous years. So that bill's on a medium fast track. It's on a fast track as fast as they can, move at this point in time. And great thanks to Chairman Frazier and the administration for supporting the measure. Just to remind you that would reinstate the authority for Caltrans to administer NEPA on behalf of federal highways. So that's what that does. Turning attention now, I'm sure you're hearing from the League and CSAC and the Fix Our Roads Coalition in your everyday lives. They are mounting pressure to get support indication into the two authors' offices. Senate Bill SB1 is by Senator Bell, has been set for hearing on the 14th. Mr. Frazier's measure AB1 has not yet been set. It's been referred to Transportation, and they're working on the details of when they'll actually schedule for a hearing. Brief overview and reminder, we've shared material. I think Lindsay was able to include in your packet a late inclusion of a comparison document that shows AB1 versus SB1, as well as a separate sheet that deals with the governor's plan. I won't discuss the governor's plan today yet because we were hoping to see his trailer bill language. He's going through the budget process again, and when we opened up the website yesterday in the trailer bill language, it was a one-pager just explaining how much money they intend to raise, but it didn't have the actual detailed language. So we're all anxiously awaiting that before we can figure out if that's something that we want to track. In terms of AB1 and SB1, they are very, very similar. Quick brief overview, they raise initially first year revenues of about $6 billion, 4.3 in new revenues, and $1.8 billion in recaptured transportation funds or other efficiencies as well, and so that totals up to $6 billion. The highlights of these are the gas tax. Both bills would increase the gas tax by 12 cents a gallon, which generates about $1.8 billion when it's in full implementation. This is one area, however, that there's a key difference between the two bills. Mr. Frazier's bill would do it immediately. Senator Bell's bill would do it on a staggered basis, 6 cents, 9 cents, 12 cents over a 3-year period. So that's one difference. And that seems to have generated some favor amongst senators who are considering voting for the bill. Both bills also include a registration fee of $38 dedicated to highway and roadway maintenance. There's also zero emission fees. Doesn't generate very much revenue now. Who knows what they'll do in the future, but they are an additional $100 in the Senator Bell's bill and $165 in Assemblymember Frazier's bill imposed on zero emission vehicles. The definition is interesting because it's not just pure battery electrics and pure alt-fuel vehicles. It does include plug-in hybrids. So it's interesting since the whole idea of imposing it on zero-emission vehicles is to put them into the funding mix, and arguably plug-in vehicles are already paying something at the pump for the gas, for the range extender activities. Other key ones, real quickly, For the freight program, both bills would dedicate a 20-cent increase in the diesel excise tax to freight programs around the state. That generates about $600 million annually. So in a five-year program, you'd have $3 billion to play with, somewhat close, bigger than the amount that was provided for trade corridor investments from Prop 1B. So this is a significant step up. Transit is treated fairly, roughly close to 10% of the funding in both bills is dedicated to transit. $300 million in each is the result of proposed increases in the dedicated amount for transit capital and for transit agencies. That's there's the continuous appropriation for both those from cap and trade. They would be doubled. The main increase that's involved in transit is increasing the sales tax on diesel, which has been a traditional source of funding for the public transportation account for 30 years. Right now it's at 1.75%. They would increase it by 3%, I think is what the number is. And that generates about $263 million. That would go out on a formula basis to transit agencies directly in most cases. This is an area where there's another difference between the two bills. In addition to what I just described, Senator Bell adds another 0.5% to the diesel sales tax, and that money would be dedicated to commuter and intercity rail capital purposes throughout the state. So the Capital Corridor, the Caltrain Corridor, the San Joaquins, et cetera, would all be able to draw on that. However, I would note that it only raises about $40 to $45 million a year, so there's a very, very deep discussion about how to address passenger rail capital needs going on in the Capitol right now. I mentioned the cap and trade. Of real interest, I think, would be both bills proposed to return half of the weight fees, about $500 million, but in a staggered fashion as well, with 20% the first year, 40, 60, 80, and 100%. So it would be $200 million a year, roughly, coming back in, and that's dedicated to roadway repair. And the last thing I'll mention is the price-based excise tax in both bills would go away. They'd reset the price-based sales tax, which is the remnant from the tax swap, where it's adjusted annually. They'd reset that at 17.3 cents, which is what it was originally when the tax swap was enacted. And that generates about $1 billion. There are other things, but I think those are the highlights. And again, the two key differences are the staggered gas tax in Senator Bell's bill and the slight difference, but dedication for passenger rail in Senator Bell's bill. And I'd be glad to answer questions. That's the fastest I've gone through it for anybody, so thank you. Thank you for paying attention to that one.
And a lot more talking to go.
Questions?
If I might just add, just so you know the lay of the land where other entities have landed, AB1 was supported by the Board of Supervisors here earlier in this month, and I understand they're considering taking a position on SB1. Just give you that backdrop.
I would just comment that MTC has supported both bills. We want the most we can get out of whatever happens up there. So we're working collaboratively with both of the legislators to try to get this done.
So my question, are we going to also support this?
Move support for both.
There we go. Have a first and a second. Any other comments? Call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you, sir. Thank you. A lot of information and a very short report.
Thank you.
But we appreciate that info.
But now I get to run back to Sacramento and tell Mr. Frazier that you're coming along.
Thumbs up.
Yeah, we're on.
That's always a happy thing to do.
Keep working hard.
Yes,
We're
thank you.
on.
Keep him happy.
That's right. 12-0, proposed extension.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and board members. I'll handle this item. Our program management contract with Stantec is set to expire by June 30th of this year. And at this time, we need to make a decision whether to issue a new RFP or to extend the contract by 1 or 2 years. If we decide to extend the contract, I will come back to you before June with a negotiated scope and budget for that new year. For several reasons, staff is recommending extending the contract by 1 year at this time. Over the past 2 years, we have seen significant increase in the authority's program complexity as more emphasis is being placed on technology and innovation. The Stantic team, which we have Habib in the audience, he's the principal in charge, as well as a lot of staff team members, Chris, Ray, Beth, and Corinne in the audience. They are really truly extension of our staff. They have provided the authority with the needed support to make the Gomentum Station a hub for testing and innovation. Stantic is also playing a major role in the development of the Shared Autonomous Vehicle Pilot Program. They're also assisting us with the expansion of Contra Costa 511 program, and most recently, they're helping us to initiate basically the I-680 Forward project, which looks at 7 strategies along the corridor. In addition, the team has developed excellent historical knowledge of the authority's projects in various stages of delivery at this time. They're providing project managers for the I-680 express lanes, for the I-684 interchange. Chris is working with Ivan on the construction of the State Route 4 Balfour, as well as other projects. Changing the team at this time will create significant disruption to the delivery milestones for these projects and programs. So another reason is with the impending recruitment of a new deputy director for the projects department, we think issuing a new RFP at this time would deprive the new deputy director from the ability to assess the needs of the department and making necessary adjustments through the RFP. For those reasons, we are seeking your approval to extend the contract by 1 year to June 30th, 2018, and we'll come back to you again before June with a negotiated scope and budget. I just want to mention in response to your question, Commissioner Arnert, out of the $8.9 million, a third of that budget is actually 2.2 is because of the 511 program that we took on, and about 700,000, which a big portion of it, 450, is for the SAV deployment testing, which they are helping with. So about a third of that is because of the new things we're doing at the authority. But we will definitely come back to you with the deliverables for the other tasks they're working on. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Hisham, thank you. So I'm a little confused. I appreciate the explanation. So 9.0 says we're executing agreement number 435 for $450,000, and then we go down to 12.0, and it says we're doing the same thing. That's what it says. Yeah. It's exactly the same. In fact, it's the same wording.
I'm sorry, say it again. I couldn't hear.
Well, we have both. We have a consent item, which I made a comment on, 9.0, which says the action of this consent item is to add $450,000 to agreement number 2 for the SAV program. Agenda item 12 says the same thing.
Incorporates the same item.
How could we? It's like we're doing it twice. That's what it says.
The action is actually to get your concurrence to come back to you with an extension of the contract. I'm sorry if there was any confusion. But
because what it says, proposed extension of agreement section for the 400, and it talks about that. So you're just, the report's confusing. It looks like you're trying to approve $450,000 twice. That's what it looks like in writing. And what you're actually saying is you just want to be able to extend the contract for 2 years without going back out.
1 year.
Or 1 year.
Yeah, so the original contract was a 2-year contract, and the idea was 2 1-year extensions, and so or up to 2 years.
No, I get that.
Okay, all right. So that's item number on page 12.1. The recommendation is we recommend extending the agreement.
I know the recommendation says that, but the report is written as though we are approving 2 change orders, and they're the exact same change order. So all of that stuff had nothing to do with this. You just wanted to say was, okay, you did this. By the way, now I want to extend the contract for a year.
Correct. That's
Okay.
that's correct.
Yeah, this one, yeah.
So
Yes.
We'll clear that up.
note to self, a little confusing. I get that, but maybe the report had more information than it needed. So, okay, thank you.
Other comments? Don?
So just make sure I understand. So back in item 9, the $450,000 will be spent by when?
The plan is by June 30th of this year.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And so any new monies will be what you would come back with. Okay. And I understand the arguments for extending. A lot of those arguments will continue to exist next year. Not all, but many of them. So what is the trigger point that we get to say, well, we actually should now take it out to rebid?
I think a lot of the projects will be moving forward in various delivery stages, so we will have a better idea of what our needs will be a year from now, as well as we will have a new deputy executive director who will be able to help us with the process as well and identify the needs of the projects department.
And I'm not suggesting anything negative about Stantec. I just think if we have a contract, then we ought to be able to make sure that we have a way to say, okay, these are the thresholds at which point we'll take it out to bid.
Yes, that's a great comment, and I one of the things I tell our people is that we have to there's a lot of consultants that want to do work for us, and I tell the deputies here and the CFO, rotate the consultants when it makes sense. So if you look at the history of our project management consultant, it's the largest one that we have. Since 1988, we had the same consultant until I got here in 2010. That's 18 years. That consulting firm was on for the first 2, and then we had Parsons for 3, and now we've had Stantec for 2. So, but we also hire for fit. I mean, we have to hire a consultant that does great work for us. That's our expectations. They don't switch staff. They don't try to implement things that we don't need or we don't want. And so Hisham has hit the nail on the head. The reason why 1 year is because our program is getting more complex. It's not like a normal deliver the PS&E and build a widen the roadway or things. The world is changing, and so we want to make sure that the updates kind of mesh with the things that we're asking our consultants to do. And then when the time frame comes at the end of that 4-year period, those projects, hopefully, if everything goes right, are going to be finished, and we'll have a slew of new projects, so hopefully we'll have more money. And so at that time, we can go back out and advertise a new scope and then have a number of consultants, because we are getting more consultants to apply for our RFPs because we're not a closed shop. And so we're trying to do exactly, I think, what you're trying to ask us to do. When does it make sense to change? Don't make changes when it doesn't make sense, right? If you're having successful delivery and it's not the right time, that I would assume you're going to tell us don't do it. But if it is the right time, then you're going to ask why not. And so that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to time when it makes sense for us so we don't have any disruption in our delivery record. We don't have any interruption on our innovation program. And we're still doing the things that we need to do to make sure that we're a great organization as you've asked us to become. And we only have 20 people, and 95% of our work is contracted out. And so we try to hire the right consultants, and we do try to turn those consultants over when it makes sense, not just because it's.
Yeah, so I think when I read this, my question was, there are so many things that we're right in the middle of right now that Stantec has been working on and have just started on, and we want to make sure they get flowing smoothly. My first question when I read through this was, why not 2 years? And I think what I'm hearing you say, Hisham, and it makes total sense to me, with the recruitment for a new deputy director for projects, we probably want to give that deputy director the opportunity to evaluate how we're doing and let them make the recommendation again in a year about whether we go out or whether we renegotiate the current contract. So with that in mind, I would move approval.
Second.
Well, first and a second, any more discussion? We'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Moving right into, before I get, never mind, I'll ask you later when we get done here. Correspondence and news clippings. There they are, right beside us. Commissioner and staff comments. And I'd like to ask Randy, with the new transportation person we have on the feds.
Secretary Chalice was
she is at least knowledgeable.
She knows where the office is. She's worked inside the building. She's maritime.
Right.
She has her husband is Mitch McConnell, so any kind of legislation. I mean, now's the time to go talk to the secretary about regulation reform and things like that. More money. They're talking about $1 trillion investment. We just went through a process. The Trump administration asked for a call for projects that are deliverable this year, calendar year 2017. And so we provided a list. We were asked to provide 2 projects. We always provide more, so we provided 3. Vasco Road's Safety Project Segment 2, we submitted the southbound HOV lane, and we submitted State Route 4, Phase 3 through the 680 interchange. The region then submitted a list of 5 projects, and our southbound HOV lane was on it. So I think we asked for 81 million?
56 for the 680.
56. So I thought we asked for the total funding, of which we got 56 million of measure.
And 87 for the 684.
Yeah. So we asked for the full amount, whatever it's going to cost, and then we'll pull the measure money off and then hopefully reallocate it. But we haven't had a new administration in 8 years, and so these fire drills, when I used to work at Caltrans, we used to get these requests all the time. And so we'll see where that goes. But I think she understands transportation. I think she's well situated politically, and I think it's a good move for the administration to have her sit in that chair. And also for us, by the way, March 30th, we're going to have a redefining mobility summit before I forget, because I'm getting old. So I just remembered that. So it's going to be held in San Ramon at the Roundhouse. We're expecting 500 people. It should be good.
Wow. Well, you gave the comments I was hoping you'd say. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I have one. This is Janet Abelson, sitting in for Tom today, and I'd like to introduce our new CCTA alternate, who is Cecilia Valdez from San Pablo. She's the mayor of San Pablo currently. So I would like to introduce her.
Mr. Chairman, I do have one comment under the executive staff report. We are planning to bring an item to the board directly in February to talk about RM3 and potential projects to advocate for funding for. And we met with MTC staff, Martin and I, last week, and they're thinking to go to the legislation in April to seek approval for the measure. So we want to give you a couple chances to look at the list before they do that.
All right. Any other commissioners' comments? You're done for right now? Any other business? Looks like we're going to adjourn. So we adjourn. Next meeting, March 2nd. Wow. March. My God, the quarter's over.
Yeah.
Time's flying.
Time is flying. Thank you for your attention.